Do you need to know that you put oil on him?
I've wiped that one already.
Have you?
So for this design, I've already prepared a ballerina shaped nail. This is just a nail that I've done before and we're just using it as a nail to work on. This is our canvas, if you like. So ignore the fact that it's a pink and white smile line nail. Ignore that, we're just going to use it as a base. Now I've buffed the surface with a block. So you've got your white block, just gone over that, and then I've cleaned it with some pure acetone. So we're ready to rock and roll. So we've got some brand spanking new box fresh gel paints that I'm going to use today, which are amazing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the colours. I'm going to use my palette. I'm going to decanter some out so I can use them, and you don't need a lot, you need the tiniest amount. These will go really far. Okay. In this little pot here, this little section, I have put some gel residue wipe off solution so I can keep cleaning my brush, and it's going to be really easy for me to use. So we're going to use the brush, pick up a little bit of colour, and we're literally going to create a background. I've got some of the darker green so we can get this mottled effect. A little bit of the lilac as well. The beauty of this design is it does not need to be perfect. This is just a background colour, that is it. I'm going to use my brush quite flat now and just blend the cuticle area of the nail, make that quite transparent. I'm going to pop that into the lamp. LED 30 seconds, UV 2 minutes. So I picked up some of the green mylar with my brush very gently, and I'm just pressing it into the nail. So pressing it onto that sticky layer and just letting it sit on that sticky layer. And it's just going to add a little bit of depth to the background. And now what we're going to do is seal that in with Mega Gloss. I want you to float over this as well. If you drag over too much, you're just going to completely take off the mylar, and then we can cure that for 1 minute in the LED. So that's completely cured now, so we have a nice surface to work on. So we're going to use acrylic now. I am going to use high speed because I'm going to do 3D and I want it to set really quickly. If you struggle with acrylic setting quick, then maybe you would want to use the medium speed or max adhesion. Have a little play around with your liquids and see what's right for you. But for me, because I want it to set quick, I'm going to use high speed. And I'm going to use a 3D brush. So what we're going to do is some leaves, and the leaves are going to sit on the outside of the fruit that we're going to create. On this nail, I'm going to create some really simple apples. It's a really simple shape and it'll get you used to making 3D fruit. I've got my greens and yellows ready. I'll tell you which powders I've got. I've got Rainforest, Secondary Green. These are all brand new, so I just need to take off the protective foil. Now, Secondary Green is super high in pigment, and even when you get it on your fingers, it will stain your fingers. That's how high in pigment it is. Then I've got Caribbean Sunsplash. So I'm just getting all these out and ready. And we've got Soft Pastel Lemon. And Palm Leaves. I'm just going to show you what these colours look like just onto my paper towel here. when you wet acrylic, it can change colour slightly. And by just wetting them and getting them all ready like this, you know exactly what colour they're going to turn to. So you can see what's good for your leaves, what's good for your apples and everything like that. So if you're picking colours and you're unsure of, I don't know if that's going to work, just get them out, put them on your paper towel, and you can see exactly what they're going to look like. So for these leaves, I'm going to double dip. I'm going to go into this light green and into that darker green. So can you see the difference in that bead? Place that down. And immediately you have shadowing from the dark green. I'm just going to take off a little bit of that. It's a little bit big. So we've got like a teardrop shape. And I'm going to press this out. You don't want it to be completely symmetrical. And if you give it a bit of a bend on the end, it's going to have more movement. And now what I'm going to do is use some of the darker green and use it like a wash just through the centre of that leaf. So I'm now going to put another leaf in the middle of that one, head. And I'm going to use the one colour. So I'm just going to use palm leaves for this. Small bead placed at the bottom. Let it set up a little bit. Tickle it up while it's still polymerising. And then when it starts to lose its shine a little, you can then go into the middle and start to press out. So from the centre you're going out all the way to the tip. Now we're going to do the same again into that lighter green, into the darker, and we're going to bring it down the nail here now. So I'm just creating a basic shape while it's still setting. You can see how shiny that is. If I start to press into that now, it's far too wet and it won't mould into shape. So as soon as it starts to lose a bit of the shine, which it is now, I can then start to press into that. And again, it doesn't need to be symmetrical. It'll make it more realistic if it isn't. I'm just going to add a little bit more of the green, the darker green, just to give a little bit of depth. Then just using palm leaves, small bead, we're going to do the same kind of thing as we did before. Tickle it up a little bit. I'm going to get a small bead, but I am going to double dip it. And I'm going to pop it here. Don't forget, you need to leave a gap in the middle of these leaves for your apples. So I'm using a sculpting form. You can do it directly onto the nail. I'll show you both ways. So I'm going to double dip into the soft pastel lemon, into palm leaves, roll that off, and I want you to touch it a little bit, and you're going to go from the bottom as if you're lifting it up. And you can see that you get that nice shadowing. So you've got those different tones of greens now from that double dipping. See, the soft pastel yellow will take on some of that green. So we've got a perfect little ball there. And I'm going to pick this up. Oh, she says. And place it onto the nail. Just going to wet underneath with my brush and some monomer. That'll just help it adhere. And then I'm going to take the dotting tool. I'm going to dip it into the powder. And I'm going to create an indentation of where the core would be. How easy is that? Do you know what I mean? So now we're going to do a bigger one. I want to try and get 3 on there. So I've got to watch what sizes. I've got to watch that I'm not going to do like a big monster apple, like a cooking apple. I want them to look like Granny Smiths because they're my favourite, because they're nice and tangy. I want some apples now. You'll have to go get some apples.
I've got some grapes.
Oh,
You'll have to
we're going to do grapes in a minute.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, so now, slightly bigger bead, so I need a little bit more liquid on my brush. And double dipping onto the sculpting form. Clean my brush, and now I'm just going to start to touch this to sort of pat and prod it into a round shape, and keep lifting underneath. Only gentle, you don't need to be aggressive with it or anything, just gentle. I'm just going to wet here on the nail with a little bit of monomer. Scoop your little apple up, roll it off your brush and put it in position where you want it. Be gentle with it. Dotting tool again into the powder. This is going to make it not stick. I'm just using the very tip of the brush now just to open it out a little bit more, just to make it a little bit deeper. Similar size. You don't want them all to look exactly the same. This is like the beauty of this design. They do not need to look identical. So we're going to do the next one directly onto the nail so you can see the difference. And you'll figure out which is easier for you. So we're going to double dip. Roll it onto the nail. Start to touch it. If you think it's too dry, if you touch it with your brush, it'll start to feed monomer into your bead. So again, I'm just making sure it's a nice round shape, and I'm making sure it's lifted. So I'm still lifting underneath. If you didn't lift it from underneath, what would happen? What do you think would happen? It would just settle and it'd be like a blob. It wouldn't be round. It'd end up like a flat blob. Like a dome, yes. Like a dome. Again, powder. Create a little dent. If you don't feel that's deep enough, you can just twist your 3D brush and give it a deeper core. Now you could just leave it like that, but what I'm going to do is add a little bit more detail. So in the palette, a little bit of white paint, a little bit of dark green. Don't you just love new tubes of paint? They're so neat and tidy. Okay, so I'm going to use this little tiny brush on the end of your dotting tool. A little bit of white. You want it to be quite dry because you're going to tap the brush. Right, you see how it's going fading out now? That's how you want it. You're going to tap it just onto that lighter part just to create a little bit of highlight. So it looks a little bit more realistic. If it dries up, you can do it again. Then we're going to use a little bit of the dark green. So if I show you on my nail, you can see that colour. I've added a tiny bit of water, literally went into the water, give it a whoosh around, just so it flows nice. I'm just going to go right into the middle, just with a little bit of it. So you've got a little bit of paint in the middle, and then with a 3D brush that's clean, it's been wiped off, you're going to smudge that a little bit, and it's just going to add a little bit of depth inside of those apples. What I'm going to do now is with that white paint again, I could have really done this at the same time, I suppose, but I'll show you separately. You're just going to dry brush on the leaves right round the edge and just bring the brush to the centre, and it'll just catch the raised sections just so it highlights it a bit and it just stands out a little bit more. So we're going to do that on all the leaves. And then what we're going to do with the apples, we're going to make them nice and shiny. Now, I don't want to just go in with Mega Gloss and go blob, blob, blob. It'll be too messy. So I'm just going to take a little bit of it out. I'm going to use a smaller brush. We can use this same brush because we want it to be nice and controlled. So a little bit of Mega Gloss, and you're just going to go around the outside. You don't need to go into the centre. Else what will happen, you will fill the core. You will fill that core part. So we're just making these apples nice and shiny. Is this classed as one of my 5 a day? It's one of my 5 a day. So healthy. So just like that, you can see that those apples are nice and shiny. Try and keep them nice and separated as well. Don't let the gel flood through them. I'm going to pop that into the lamp now and cure that. What I'm going to do now is use the brush on glue, and all I'm going to do is seal the paint work that we did on the leaves. That's all I'm using it for. It will make the leaves slightly shinier, but when that starts to dry, it won't be quite as shiny as the Mega Gloss. You can sort of probably see that start to diminish a little bit. Now I'm going to add a little bit of cuticle oil. You need to make sure that your brush on glue is dry before you add cuticle oil. And I'll tell you why. Because it will go white. So if I dragged over and got the brush on glue wet, it would start to turn white and it would ruin your design. Because whenever you get glue wet, it turns white, whether that's with water or oil. So that's that one. Nice juicy apples, all nice and finished. So I hope you enjoyed that. All the products are available on the Nao Nails website, and you can have a little look in the description below, and they're all listed there. You just got to click on them and it'll take you straight to the website. Really easy. And also don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Nao Nails UK.